Look, these shops, they just don't care. I got stuck with a $120,000 doctor bill because the shop that I work for decided to cancel my health insurance the night before I had a major surgery. I didn't think it was possible. I ended up getting a lawyer, and they said since I wasn't working for the shop for quite a year, they could do what they please. I already paid for the health insurance that full month, and since I had my surgery the last day of the month, the shop did refund me for that one day of insurance that I paid for. They didn't say they were going to do it. They just canceled it on me. So it was a big surprise. 5 weeks after my surgery, I got this bill. Luckily, I was able to get some things sorted out, and I didn't have to pay quite the $120,000. So right there just goes to show you that a lot of these shops, they don't really care about their technicians. They just want to make their money, and that's it. So I'm going to talk about why I feel like a lot of mechanics are quitting the industry. I'm going to give you my experience. So before I start, let me tell you my background on being a mechanic. So I've been in the automotive industry for a little over 15 years. I worked 10 years at dealerships, so most of it was at a new car dealership, and then I did work a couple years at a used car dealership. Now, both of those had a lot of cons. There wasn't a lot of pros to any of them. When I worked at the new car dealership, I was flat rate, so you were pretty much, when you didn't have work, you were forced to just try to go out there and sell as much as possible, regardless if vehicles needed it, so you can survive, which I definitely wasn't a big fan of that. I just didn't like trying to rip people off. And also, I worked at a used car dealership. Now, the thing with that, I was paid hourly plus a commission. The commission you would get every month if you got so many used cars out total as a shop. And they would always say you would need like 50 cars, and then they would only send you 49. So you never really hit that commission. But when they hired me, they didn't really say that they did that. They just said, oh yeah, you get a paid commission. Anyhow, the worst thing about working at this used car dealership is we would get a lot of cars in from auctions and stuff like that. And at the auctions, before people send the cars to the auctions, they try to bondo and cover over everything and paint stuff up to make it look nice. So the used car dealership, they kind of knew that. So they wanted you to just kind of turn a blind eye to it, safety it, and send it out the door and let somebody buy it, overpay for these vehicles that are just complete garbage. I didn't feel right about it, so when I got these cars in, I would always check for rotted subframes, rotted frames, and stuff like that. But the biggest thing that I remember when I was there is I had a Chevy Malibu, and the frame on the car, on the body itself, looked pretty nasty. So I went around with the screwdriver, and I shoved the screwdriver through the frame. I got in trouble for that. They said I forcefully stuck that screwdriver through there, and it was good steel. It wasn't rotted. If that was good steel, an old, worn-out screwdriver wasn't going to go through it. Anyhow, I got in trouble for that. So that was a big turnoff for me trying to work for this used car dealer. And I also worked at a off-road shop as a service manager technician for a couple of years, which I really enjoyed that, but they ended up getting sold out and closing down. So I ended up leaving there. And I also worked at a fleet shop working on tractor and trailers, which that was not bad. I got paid hourly, but the pay just wasn't that great. So let's go ahead and get into why I feel like mechanics are quitting this industry, and this is all from experience that I have had happen to me. All right, let's get to the number one reason. Cost. Cost to be a mechanic is just outrageous. The amount of money you get paid for the money that you are paying just doesn't add up. Sometimes it feels like you might be making good money, but the amount of money that you're paying to be a mechanic is quite a bit. So let's get to it. Number one is just startup. When you start being a mechanic, you need a lot of tools. Sometimes you can start out with very basics and just keep adding, but not all the time that's how it works. When I first started, I was a quick maintenance tech, and what I did was pretty much everything besides diagnostics. So I would do brakes, tires, alignments, any kind of flush, any kind of suspension work, I would do that, exhaust. And when I started, it was only $12. $12 an hour. It wasn't flat rate, anything like that. But I was able to get away with just having basic hand tools, basic power tools, and complete the job. But I wasn't getting paid enough money, and I felt like I was doing a lot more than what I was getting paid for, which I was. So I decided to go flat rate, and I got into a shop. They gave me an $8 raise. So I thought, $8, man, that's a lot. That's good. That's good money. Not necessarily. When I first got in there, health insurance was crazy high. Every dealership that I worked at for a family has been $1,200 to $2,000 a month for health insurance. So I have not been able to find a dealership that had remotely decent health insurance. And it was super high deductibles. So it really didn't help at all. Anyhow, the cost to start up, I ended up spending $10,000 to become this flat rate tech. When I first got there, I worked a month. I borrowed a lot of tools, and the guys were like, well, we got this 3 strikes borrowing tools. So you can borrow a tool 3 times, and then once you got to borrow it for the 4th time, you need to buy this tool. So, which only makes sense because you're spending money on your tools to make money. They're not spending money on their tools for you to make money. So it makes sense. So in order for me to make good money on flat rate, although I was getting paid $20 an hour, I had to invest and buy some tools. So I bought $10,000 worth of tools. I bought a decent toolbox, and I filled it with as much stuff that I needed. So from there on, I've had a tool bill it was every week I was paying a tool bill, but about every month I was spending anywhere from $300 to $500 for the last 13 years. It wasn't until I got to year 13 to where I pretty much had everything I needed, and occasionally I would buy tools. So almost $40,000 in tools. Big startup cost. Not all the time you're going to have to do that. When I started, Harbor Freight wasn't as big as it is now. They didn't have Tecton tools. So if you are getting into the industry, definitely look into that kind of stuff. Now that I do this for fun, I stopped buying all these tools off of the tool trucks. Now, I used to think buying tools was an investment. Hear me out. It's not as much of an investment as you would think it would be. Yes, they have some really nice tools. Don't get me wrong. It's nice that they come to the shop and they service your tools. I love all that. And sometimes you're just buying off the tool guy. I had a Mac tool guy that I bought off him just because I liked him. He was a good dude. He did me well. When I could get deals, he gave me deals, which was cool, you know. But at the end of the day, you also can't spend that kind of money when you're not making enough to justify that. So definitely check out Harbor Freight, Tecton, buy that kind of stuff. Anyhow, my buddy passed, and this was his toolbox, tool cart here. After he passed, his mom tried to sell his tools back to the tool guy because what is she going to do with his tools? You know, just let them sit in the garage. Well, they would only give 25% of whatever he paid for these tools. So you used to think like, hey man, I would buy a $600 wrench set, and you know this would hold value for the life of the wrench. That's not the case anymore. It doesn't hold the value. So what's the sense of buying these very expensive tools when value of the tool isn't there anymore? Just go buy this Harbor Freight or Tecton tools, and it would get you just as far as what buying off the tool truck will. Anyhow, that's just my opinion. I got a lot of tools from a lot of different companies, and I love them. But if I would have gone through this, know what I know now, I probably would have never invested the way I did. These two kind of roll in together with cost. It's time. Also, you don't get paid overtime. So you lose a lot of time going into these shops if you're flat rate, and there's no work. And they want you to sit there and wait for work. Not all the times you can sit there and wait for work. Like, you can probably go home and make more money than what you're sitting there waiting for work for. So, and also these shops, man, I pretty much work 10-hour days every other Saturday at dealerships. and they expected it of you. And the problem is they would force that upon you because they would only bring in so much work in the morning and then load the end of the day with work to where it forces you to stay over because, man, these customers need these cars right now. Like, you can't go home. You can't go enjoy dinner with your family because, you know what, I loaded this schedule at the end of the day because I want you to stay here because I, the service manager, don't have a family. So it costs you time, man, and costs you a lot of money. So if you're looking to get in this industry, you got to be out there for yourself. You can't let that kind of stuff happen. You know, if that's happening, an old guy that I worked with said that's the reason why your toolbox has wheels. You know, you can always find work, which is true, but not all the time it's good work. So the next thing is stress. This industry has a lot of stress. A lot of stress. You got stress from the customers, you got stress from the service writers, you got stress from your service manager. And the problem is with the customers, they're not properly informed by the service writers, and the service writers aren't properly informed by the service managers. And the service managers don't have their proper training. So to explain all this stuff to their service writers, for them to explain it to the customers. If any of that makes sense. A lot of the times the service managers were never technicians, so they don't understand that side of the shop, which I feel like, man, you should almost have to have wrenched for a certain amount of years before you can be a service manager, because then you know how to treat your guys. You know what's actually going on. And same with service writers, man. I feel like service writers should be old technicians, man. The problem is sometimes they don't want to deal with customers, which I get it. But if you can properly inform your customers, you're not going to have them sitting there nagging you for, man, when's this going to be done? I need it done right now. Well, you got a 10-hour job, and your service writer just promised this customer that, hey, your car's going to be done in 10 minutes, and it's a 10-hour job. Like, I've had that happen. I think I was doing a subframe on something, and my service writer he come out and said, man, I promised this guy that his car would be done in the next hour. I'm like, dude, like, everything on this car is rotted and breaking. It's not going to be done until the end of the day. And sure enough, he comes out an hour later. He's like, why isn't my car done? He's flipping out. And then it's like, well, now it's like lunchtime. And like, well, you can't go to lunch. Like, you need to stay here and keep working on it. I told him it would be done an hour ago. I'm like, I told you it won't be. So then I'm skipping lunch. So that kind of stress of just the customers nagging, wanting the stuff done right now, and then your service writer just not being knowledgeable of anything, just makes it really hard. And then your service writer, your service manager, just not being on your side as a technician. Like, they need to understand what's going on in their shop. They need to understand their technicians and their guys to be able to make the shop not so stressful for them. So just the collaboration of all of them make this job freaking stressful. And even these cars, depending on where you work, a lot of cars where I'm at, they're rusted, man. You're using heat, stuff's breaking, you're dealing with just a bunch of crap. And unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. But it wouldn't be so stressful if deadlines weren't set that are unrealistic, and if you weren't getting paid flat rate, you were getting paid a certain amount, so you can get the job done in a reasonable time, and you're getting paid, and you don't got somebody out there nagging you. So there could be a lot that could be done to make this job a lot more enjoyable. Next is physical tool. This job kicks the crap out of you. I am 33 years old. Let me tell you the issues that I have going on. I have carpal tunnel. So the years of running impact, air hammers, getting your hands jammed down in these tight spots, trying to get a nut or bolt in, man, that all caused carpal tunnel. I have neck and back problems. There was a guy that cleaned up transmission fluid but didn't actually use degreaser to get it up, so the shop floor is super slick. I slipped on it and I fell. I hurt my back, I hurt my neck, and that was really early in my career. So I've been dealing with this problem for a long time. Also, I tore my right rotator, bicep, and I jacked up my clavicle just from over the years of setting gears, doing heavy work, and the crappy thing is, like, I know I messed up my shoulder from working on these cars, but I still wasn't able to get workers' comp because it was over the years of doing it. So I was out of work for a little while. I had that surgery and didn't really, I put my body on the line for the company, and, I paid for it, not them. So anyhow, and then the last year, I ended up having a hip replacement. So, you get them paid, and even when I worked flat rate for the beginning of my years. So I was always in that flat rate mindset, like, work's in here, I got to hurry up, I got to get this thing in and out the door best as possible without having a return. So I put my body in positions to where I now regret, I've had all these problems, and if I would have just slowed down and kind of thought out what I was doing, maybe I wouldn't have such a hard time with my body now at 33 years old. So I got a full hip replacement, and I definitely regret it. So puts a big toll on your body because you're being flat rate, you're wanting to make money, so you don't think about yourself. You're thinking about trying to make money, trying to support your family, try to pay your house payment, try to pay your bills, and you don't feel the pain while you're working. You feel it when you get home, when your body's just wrecked because your adrenaline's low and you're just sitting there like, man, my day was miserable. Now my body's killing me. Like, that's what happens, especially being flat rate. Like, you don't think about your body until it's too late. But also, you're around chemicals all the time that you're breathing in, you're touching, you're grabbing, whatever. You're hearing, got impacts and air hammers going, so you got to make sure you're protecting your ears, your eyes. Like, you always have something floating around the shop, chemicals, fluids dripping out of cars, you're cutting, grinding, something breaks, you can get something in your eye, so you got to make sure you have that eye protection. And also knee protection. I'm lucky that when I first started, one of the guys showed me from kneeing on cement for over 20 years, he had so much water built up in his knees were trashed. So I automatically, when I first started, that was probably the first 6 months of me wrenching, I bought a knee pad, and I've been using that knee pad ever since. I don't care what anybody said to me, I was not going to have knees like him. I didn't care how many people tried to, make fun of me because I'm kneeing on a pad, blah, 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 blah. I seen his knees, just wasn't happening. So this job takes a toll on your body. It would be just lack of care from the companies. You are the lowest man on the list if you're a technician. The car wash guys are above you. It's just the way it is. Shops are always unsafe work conditions. There was a time I needed my lift fixed. It went a year because it wasn't completely broke down yet. It went a year before they fixed it. And man, that could have been bad. So unsafe work conditions. And then when they're supposed to have specialty tools for their technicians, a lot of the times they don't. So you have this job, you got to get it done, you got to make money on it. So you're either trying to make something work, which is taking way more time than what it needs to take because you don't have the proper tools, or you're going out and buying the proper tools. So they just don't care. And also, like, I worked for a couple shops that would let you work on your cars when you were slow. They didn't mind. But then I also worked for some shops that were like, no, you have to pay to work on your car. That right there is like, man, you have me sitting here doing nothing. I want to pull my car in, do an oil change, tire rotation, maybe do an alignment if I have time, whatever. Like, you're not paying me to be here, but I'm sitting here. But they still want you to pay them to work on your car. That's just crazy, outrageous. I understand having an RO if something happens, so you can have proof that you were given the okay to work on your car in the shop, and then it's covered by insurance or whatever the case may be. But man, making your guys pay to use the shop when you're sitting around doing nothing, man, it just doesn't make sense. Thought the story at the beginning was bad. That was only a portion of the crap that I've had to go through throughout my career. This here is the reason why I left the automotive industry. Last year, I did miss some time working. My buddy passed away. I got him a job with me. He was working with me. He passed away, and I missed some time working because of that, which was, pretty hard. You don't foresee these things happening. They happen, and sometimes it hits you all at once. And then my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I took some time off while she had her procedures and her chemo and radiation and stuff like that to be there with my mom. And then not too long after that, my brother was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma. So I missed some more time with my brother because, my brother was going through it. And so the shop was kind of like punishing me because I wasn't at the shop. I needed to be at the shop, which, I get it. They need to make money. But you know what? None of this stuff is ever planned, and none of this is wanted stuff. Like, this all freaking sucks. And you're going to punish me for being there for my family, being there for my friends and stuff like that. It doesn't make sense. So where I worked, there was a couple of different tiers of how you're getting paid. And the highest tier was heavy line. So all they did was transmissions and engines. And I was right below that. So occasionally I would do some engines and transmissions. Well, since I was missing a lot of work, it seemed like every time I was coming in, all I was doing was engines and transmissions. Now, I had a lot going on, man, and at the time, man, I ended up losing it. I went in there on my manager, I'm like, what is going on? Like, if you're going to have me do this stuff, you're going to have to pay me what what the heavy line guy gets paid. And then I get told, like, well, you got to prove yourself. And it's like, I've been doing this for years. I don't have to prove this to nobody. I've done plenty of them for you guys. I don't have to prove nothing. Like, you want me to continue doing this? I need paid. And then my boss's boss gets involved, and it turns into this huge blowout. And then, I'm just kind of thinking, I try to de-escalate the situation or whatever, and I was already having issues with my hip. I had it replaced. So I was like, you know what? I apologize, whatever. And I went to the doctor's on lunch, and he gave me a light duty slip. It said I can still do my normal work, just not that heavier stuff. Well, they didn't like that, and they said I could not return to work until I was off of light duty. And my doctor, he did his thing or whatever, and he said, man, I was having problems. I couldn't even walk 10 minutes, all right? So my doctor is like, you can go ahead. Let's get some x-rays and check this out. My hip was so bad. He was like, I've never done this on anybody so young, but we're going to have to do a hip replacement for you because you have a lot of issues here. So I told my work, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to have this done. Well, I wasted a lot of my FMLA time. I wouldn't even say wasted. I used a lot of my FMLA time with my family and all this other stuff. So I had like 2 weeks left and I can get back to full duty. And they're like, well, if you can't get back on this time, we're probably going to have to let you go. So I just stopped her there and said, you know what? I'll just come pick my stuff up because I don't want to work for a company that's going to do this to somebody. So yeah, now I work on Jeeps for fun. A lot of people can't grasp that I do this for fun, but yeah, I do this for fun. So the biggest thing is a lot of these companies, they don't care, man. They just want their money. So if you're gonna be a mechanic, there are a couple shops that you can get into that are worth it. When I worked on an off-road shop, man, it was great. I had good insurance, customers were great, everything was great there, but they ended up closing. I probably should have tried to find another shop, but off-road shops are kind of a little further away than where I was at. So if you're going to do this kind of work, definitely get into the specialty stuff. Go work in an off-road shop or a tuner shop or something like that. Majority of the time the pay is better insurance, the stress level is a lot lower. So that's what I would suggest. If I had the opportunity to get back into that, I probably would, but I would never go back to a dealership. Never in my life. My kids ask me if they want to do it. No, I wouldn't let them. So that is one thing. If you do want to do this, look into the specialty shops. Well, that pretty much sums it up, guys. So, just the cost of entry level, the stress, the toll on your body, the shops just not giving a crap about their technicians. I mean, for me, if you're going to go work at a dealership, I would tell you not to. So that is all from my experience. All these things have happened to me. So I do know some others that, kind of enjoy it. But, so yeah, just, take in what I have told you and just use it as something to kind of guide you through your career. But also make sure you take care of your body and go to work for you. And your toolbox always has wheels on it. So if you're having problems, just leave. There's jobs out there. You guys have a good one.